Hello, I'm Professor Matthew Rotella, and I'm going to now model the TCAN that I set up reference imagery for in my previous tutorial, uh, which, again, you're going to want to set up like a crosshair. I have my uh, bottom orthograph set up now as well, which actually I'm going to switch this back to my top. That's the one I'm going to want to switch to more often. And if you want to have, and if you're working with these exact images, and you want to have your transforms match mine, they're all listed right here, and you can have these numbers match up with your numbers. And I'll just click each one real quick, and that way you can have everything match up exactly the same if it pleases you. And yeah, let's get into it. Got my TCAN. First things first, we're gonna wanna, like I know I said I measured, which I did, of course, but things are probably getting stretched in perspective, and that's probably what accounts for the discrepancy between my image, because you can see that my lens was below the lip here, and because of like this angle that we have on this ellipse. But regardless, I'm going to drag this up to match this edge, just because, even though I know it was already correct, but it'll just help me to have everything matching. Alright, now the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to rough in our general shape. I pressed 4 to go into wireframe view. You're going to want to be switching between 5 shaded view and 4 wireframe view pretty often as you're modeling, because you're going to be tracing over your reference, and obviously you can't see what you're tracing when it looks like this. So now of course the biggest difference here is going to be we need to get these corners in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to our top orthograph, and we're going to be using this to get things in there. Now I'm going to be using my insert edge loop tool to insert edge loops. Basically I want to have it, I'm going to be putting it like in the middle of each of these curves here, and then we're gonna flatten things, and we'll get there soon enough. Now I have my insert edge loop tool here on my polygon modeling shelf. You can find it under mesh tools, and if you want to add any tool from your menus into your shelves, what you can do is hover over the tool in the menu, and if you hold down Control Shift, so you're holding down Control and Shift, and then middle mouse drag to the shelf, it'll put it on the shelf. Now I don't need 2 of these, so I can go to my settings and open up my shelf editor and get rid of this from there. But yeah, so I added certain tools here onto the side. The only ones that we're going to be using in this is insert edge loop tool for the most part, and chamfer vertices that I added right there, which I'm only going to use once. But then just if you're like, oh my goodness, like why doesn't my shelf look like his shelf? This is the slide edge tool right here, which will slide an edge along an edge. And then this is the average vertices tool, which is pretty handy, but not for what we're going to be doing today, which is under edit mesh, and then average vertices is right here. Anyway, like I said, we're mainly just going to be using the insert edge loop tool now, which again is under mesh tools, insert edge loop, and we're going to be putting these in here. So now, because I'm going to end up beveling these, I'm going to be putting it basically in the middle of this curve here. And just to help me stay rather exact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my attribute editor, and you can see that there's like a percentage here. I'll go 8, just 8.1, that I can insert things into. That way when I go over here, poly split ring 2, this can help me keep things symmetrical. 2, is it going to be 2, 1? No, I'm going to want to compensate in the other direction. 1, 9 again. No, I was right. 2, 1. Pardon me. And I can check if this is symmetrical basically by going into Object X and then Vertex Selection. Ooh. We're not symmetrical. Should this be... But if this is, we'll go 8, and then this is this has to be 2, 5, if that's 8, and now we're symmetrical. Yeah, because you got your symmetry tools up here. I'll turn symmetry back off, and then I'll do the same thing, go in the other direction. Again, this is my attribute editor, which you can find here. Up here in this corner, it's this symbol, but it's also over here on the side with how I have it. Like if you don't see it here on the side, this is how you turn that on and off. Again, we'll do 8, and then that would make this one same thing as the other side. 2, 5. All right. And all right. Yeah, now let's flatten things out here. So basically what I'm going to want to do is go into Vertex Selection, and I'm going to use my marquee to make sure that I'm selecting vertices on both the top and the bottom, because if I just selected, like this, and this in my top orthograph, I'm going to be missing all my bottom vertices. Then when I go to make this edit, it's not going to be right. So I'm using my marquee here to select the top and the bottom at the same time, so that you end up with this 8 vertice selection. Oh, pardon me, I keep pressing my Windows key by accident. Now I'm going to scale these in to flatten things out. Now, basically eyeballing this is good enough, but if you want to make sure things are perfectly flat, what you can do is you go into face selection mode, select each of these faces, and then use your scale tool, but you're going to have your tool settings, and which you can find right here, and change your axis orientation to component, which should switch it to be the same as what your selection is. Then you can scale inwards, and that will make it perfectly flat, which you could see a little bit of movement when I did it. So it means I wasn't perfectly flat before, but I definitely was good enough already, but regardless, I'll make it perfect for anybody who's particularly picky out there. Oh, and yeah, make note that I switched back to object axis orientation, which, pardon me if I'm switching between the manipulator tools too quickly. Your hotkeys, which I should have gone over these at the beginning, just in case um, anybody forgets. Q is your selection tool, W is translation, E is rotation, and then R on the keyboard is your scale tool, which for me at this point, like switching between them is like second nature. But anyway, you can see we already have the basic shape of what we want roughed in here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to edge selection mode. We're going to select all these edges, and you want to double click to select them as edge loops. Now we're going to hit bevel, which is right here on the shelf. It's also in the edit mesh tool, bevel. And now this is going to be way too big of a bevel. We don't need all that. So in your attribute editor, again, you're going to want to turn the fraction down. And probably going to want one more segment. And the fraction to be a little bit bigger. And we're looking a little off here from our reference image. And generally that's okay, but I'm going to adjust just for the sake of really lining things up here. And I'll go symmetry, object X, and put that like that, and then I'll go symmetry, object Z. Well, bring those in a little bit there. Again, just basically tracing my reference, and I'll do the same thing here. Object X, which if you were happy with however it was before, that's fine. You can just keep that, and then I'll go object Z again. Oop. All right, there we go, and that's good. And yeah, that's looking good. All right, now we can continue from here. So now what we're going to want to start doing is, which you can readdress these edges also, which these are going to be a little off now. Component, and scale those in. Bada bing. All right, so now we have those beveled corners on our guy there. All right, now we're gonna, and now that I'm here, I'm also going to save. Seems like a good checkpoint in case anything goes wrong. All right, yeah, so now I want to make my sort of thickness. that I'm going to have to the wall of the can here, and then I'm going to do that on the top and the bottom at the same time. I'm going to turn my symmetry off because it's going to get wonky if I leave it on. And yeah. So, yeah, here we go. I'm going to go face. I'm going to select all my top faces. Actually, this would be easiest to do in my top orthographic view. I'm going to just get my marquee, make a selection like that, which will select all of my top and all of my bottom faces all at once. Now I'm going to extrude. And now I'm not going to move my extrusion at all. I'm going to just hit R to get my scale tool. Right now it's still set to component as my axis orientation. I'm going to change that back to object. And now what we're going to do is we're going to scale this in using this handle and create what is often referred to as a polygon island. So I'm going to scale that in the thickness that I want of my wall, which looks like it could maybe be a little bit thicker. Let me see if I get a little bit more control. Nah. That's pretty good, actually. I like that. Yeah. And now we're going to extrude this downwards. So now we're going to hit extrude again. Now again, I still have my top and my bottom selected. And again, I'm not going to move this. Instead, I'm going to use my scale tool still and scale it inwards like so, top and bottom, keeping it totally symmetrical there, and keep my walls totally straight, which is exactly what I want. And now I want to have just my top selected, and I'm going to bring this top in to be my circle in the center here. So I'm going to make a new polygon island. So now to select the entire top and to help me do this easily, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tab selection. So if you select one face and then hold the tab key, you'll get this icon, this like target with a plus or a minus if you hover over something that's already selected. But if it's something that's not selected, you'll get this target with a plus, and then I can click and drag, and you can see how it just highlights things nice and easy, like a paint select, which there's a paint select here, but the tab selection is much more controllable than that. And now here we go, extrude, and again I'm going to use my scale tool and scale inwards, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of these faces, and then I'm going to make my hole, which it used to be that doing this sort of thing was a real pain, but a couple, or you could like set up a guide shape and then vert snap things to guide shapes, but now there's this magical tool right here called Circularize, which usually works best if you select edges or vertices. And where is it in these tools up here? It's gotta be in here somewhere. I always just select it from the shelf. Doesn't matter. Circularize is right here on your polygon shelf. You can see it pop up in the beginning what it is, or down there in the bottom left hand corner what it is. It's the Circularize, and when I hit it, it will turn everything into a circle. Now it has also twisted all of my edges all sorts of ways that I don't want them to be twisted. But to fix that, there is in fact just a twist right here, which I can get it to be normal again. Looks like what I want. It's like maybe not 30. Okay, let's see. 25? Yeah, 25. That looks like it's even relatively, or maybe not. Which I think that looks good because this is straight. Yeah, these lines that at each of those guys there is straight. So that should be good. I'll leave it there. Okay. Now edges. Oh, I got 28 edges. Which the reason why I created this polygon island before turning these into a circle is now if I want to insert edges into the top here, my edge flow flows around in a circle, as opposed to if I didn't do this, then my edges would still flow all around my object, which isn't really something I want any longer. And anyway, so yeah, now that I have this sized to my circle, and I can see that's 28 edges, we're going to be making the lid, but before I do that, I'm going to be bringing this up, which, hold on, I didn't write my measurements down. The lid's about 1.5 centimeters tall, so I'm going to make a cylinder that is exactly that, 1.5 centimeters tall. I'll create a cylinder. I'll bring it up. Polycylinder 2. I'm going to make the height. Here my attribute editor. Polycylinder 2 tab. 1.5. And I'm going to work this radius outwards. And that looks like about right. Just to get a nice even number, I'll just make that 4. But then this is also going to be the outside of it. So, you know what I'll do? Actually, I'll do like 4.2. Yeah, it looks like it's probably going to be a good thickness for what I want. Yeah, and this is going to eventually be my lid. And I'm going to have my subdivisions on my lid match that of my can here, which is 28. And yeah, and I want this. Now this matches measurements that I had, so I want my lid to come to about here. And I'm going to want all of this to match up perfectly to the bottom of where I have my lid. So to do that, I'll select all these faces, but you can paint select like I did before, or I can do select this face and then shift double click, and again, because of that edge flow that I explained earlier of how I made the polygon island, this is all this all flows around in a circle. And now if I use my movement tool, I hold down V, and then which it goes to snap to points right here, vertice snapping, and I drag downwards. That'll snap to these bottom vertices, but only if I grab this one. Like if I were to hold down V with my movement tool and grab it from the center, it would snap to various vertices here on the circle, and I don't want that. I just want it to snap in the Y direction to the bottom there, and now it has. Also, it looks like this edge needs to come in a little. 4. I'm also going to rotate my lid here so that these edges generally line up on the inside here. Okay, which rotate Y, I'll just make that an even 6 degrees. And that's about perfect. Okay, now yeah, now let's finish modeling this here can. Let's hide the lid for now. Let's bring this edge up. So I have the edge selected still. Oh, pardon me. And I'm going to go into my front view, hit extrude, bring that up to the top there. I'm going to add this curve in later, so I'm going to bring it up just to the base of where it curves. And now we need to do, now I'm going to save again. Again, just a nice place to have like a checkpoint, basically. And now what I need to do is I need to give this can thickness. Now, usually the two ways that you would go about giving something thickness would be that you would do one of two things. Usually what you would try and do is you would either like duplicate the whole object and then scale it in and then bridge from one to the other. But you can see because of the shape of it, that doesn't really work. Or what you would do is this, and you would go into face selection mode, select all the faces of something, and then hit extrude, and then you would extrude in a direction to give it thickness. But again, because of the shape of it, that doesn't quite work. So I don't want to do either of those methods. I want to make sure that I entirely undo that poly extrude. So what I'm instead going to do is I'm going to use different parts of this to manufacture the thickness of it. Which when I use words like manufacture, that makes it sound scary. But let me see, bring in my outliner just so you can kind of see a little more of what's going on here. I'll hit Control D to duplicate it, and then I'll hide my original. So now I have my duplicate, TCAN1, and I'm going to use this to make parts to make the thickness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete various parts of this here. So I'm going to want to get rid of this, and I'm going to want to get rid of this, and then I'm going to want this floor to be the same. So I want to get rid of that. So again, I'm just to do that, I'm just clicking and then shift, double clicking, and then deleting. And now I have this in 3 separate pieces. So if I double click, it'll select all of this, and then I will delete. And now I have 2 things with which to manufacture my floor. But your normals, which on an object decide which way its faces are facing, are going to be facing the wrong direction for these 2 pieces, because this is going to now be the inside instead of the outside. So this is now going to be the bottom of the can, this part here. So we're going to want these faces to be facing us. So I'm going to double click to select those, mesh display, reverse, and double click to select these, mesh display, reverse. And now the neat thing about this is that because of how I modeled this, all of these vertices here on this outer edge are still perfectly in line with all of these vertices on this outer edge. So I'm going to get a nice straight wall when I work with this here. And I'm going to bring these in towards each other. But before I do that, I'm going to bring my other T-can back. And the reason is I want to see how thick I want to make it. And I think, fine, I'll look at it in my side orthograph. Yeah, I think that looks good. That looks like a nice thickness. Alright, and now I want to combine my duplicate with my original in order to give it the thickness that I want. Now when I do this, I'm going to go T-can, and then I'm going to do Control Select, T-can 1, and then I'm going to say Mesh Combine, and that'll treat them as if they're the same object, but also give me this nasty transform, mucking up my outliner, making things, and it'll give me 2 of them actually, making things look all messy. And you can't just delete these. If you delete it, it'll mess up your object. So what you actually have to do is you have to select your object and then go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and then it'll get rid of those transforms. And now your outliner looks nice and clean again. Right, let me get my reference out of the way. And I'm going to get inside here. I probably should have done this bridge while they were still separate, but I was getting excited. Anyway, double click, select this outer edge, double click, select this outer edge, then I'll hit bridge. I want to make sure you have no divisions in between any of that. Which you can adjust here. You can adjust your divisions in your attribute editor, and you can adjust them ahead of time by opening up your bridge options. But regardless, I don't have any set. So everything's fine. And now I want to extrude this edge and extrude this edge, because now these are going to connect to each other. So I'm going to select both of them and then hit Poly Extrude. I'm going to hit R to get my scale tool, and I'm going to scale them in to give myself the thickness that I want. And then I'll hit bridge and bridge it. And I can always adjust this thickness after the fact by just selecting this ring of faces and scaling it however I want, which I might make it a little thicker. And that looks good. And now we basically have our can. We're almost home free. Now I'm going to bring this lid back, which I should probably name like T can lid. All right. Looking good for the most part. Okay. I'm gonna hide this. I'm gonna delete all these faces on the bottom. And now you'll see that trick that I was talking about before, where to give this thickness to match onto this, which, hold on, I'll hide this again. 5. I'll go into face, double click, which selects every face on the object, and then hit extrude, and then I'll bring that inwards to give it thickness, which TK2 4. Just trying to see to what degree I might be clipping here, because I don't want to be. So I'll scale this back out. Still clipping a little bit. And there we go. Whoop. Oops, hold on. I was grabbing it by the center. I want to be grabbing it by this. Oop. And yeah, now I'm not clipping any longer, which is what I want. Maybe I'll give it just a little bit in there. All right, very good. And oh yeah, my normals are facing the wrong way because I effectively turned it inside out. Double click to select all the faces, mesh display reverse, and now that's looking good. Now I'll hit save again because now we're getting close to the end here. Now all that's left are all of these little bevels going around the various edges here. So I'm going to want to make, and just rounding things out a little bit. So I'm going to hide this again for now. Let's see, 5. I'm going to want to round out this here at the top, which I'm not going to do anything extreme here. I'm just going to insert one subdivision right in the middle. Now to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my multi-cut tool here. So I have that selected. I'm going to hold down Control, which Control with the multi-cut tool makes it insert edge loops. And now if I middle mouse click, even if I'm way over here on the side, if I middle mouse click while holding Control, it will insert an edge loop perfectly into the center of whatever I was in. So now that I have an edge loop perfectly in the center, I'll just round this out by just pulling that up. All right. Now, what I'll do is I'll make this crimp over here, which I was tempted to model this as it was manufactured, which would mean like modeling each of this in like 3 separate pieces, one for the top, middle, and bottom, and then actually like stretching those edges like around the middle piece to sort of like wrap it and crimp it over that like metal sheet. But ended up deciding against that. Okay, so this here, I'm gonna insert an edge loop into the outside there, which is gonna be tucked in a little bit, so I want this to be a little bit in from this bottom edge. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this whole edge, so click and then shift double click and then click and then shift double click, and now I'm gonna extrude this. Extrude, and now pull this outwards, and now I'll just use my manipulators to sort of even this out a little bit. Pardon me. I just hit F to focus. I'm going to pull this down a little bit. And now this, double click this edge, pull this down, and double click this edge, scale it out, and then pull, I'm going to scale this out a little bit more. And now what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to select this whole edge and I'm going to bevel it to sort of give me a little more rounding, and I don't really want to go crazy here with the edge loops, but I'll do one more bevel. And that bevel might be a little bit of a mistake. Let's see, I think I'm going to bring this edge up a little bit, scale it out. Alright, now that's nice and round. Yeah, wraps up and in. And it looks to be the appropriate thickness right here in my reference, which is good. And now I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. Insert an edge loop. Make sure it's on the outside. It is. Alright. And back to my perspective view. Face. Click, shift, double click, click, shift, double click. Extrude. Outwards. And now again, oh my goodness. I don't know why I keep hitting my Windows key. I used to hit my Windows key all the time by accident when I worked on a Mac and then shifted to working on a Windows computer. But I've been working on like strictly Windows for years now, so I don't know what the problem is. But regardless, just move this up and over, click. Double click, select the whole loop, move this, and then double click, select this whole loop, scale that out. Alright. And again, I'll bevel, add an extra segment, adjust my fraction. Which I want to make sure that it's bulging in the place that I want it to. So, sort of adjust that curve a little bit more. And that's looking pretty good. And let's see. Yep, and again, it looks like it's the right size. And now, there's just one more of those for me to do on the lid. Object mode. Whoop. All right, and yeah, the lid is thickness. We're all good there. Hold on. It's about the same size, so I'm just gonna, yeah, I wanted that to be a little bit bigger for sure. All right, face, click, shift, double click, click, shift, double click, and extrude. Let's bring it out. And edge. Let's bring this up, bring it in, bring this edge up, out, bring this edge out, and then up. Because again, we want to have it essentially look like the metal is like wrapping around to form that crimp. So I'm basically just getting edges and doing that very thing. I'm going to take this edge, bevel it, add one more segment, increase my fraction, and yeah, that'll do it. All right, and now our can is effectively modeled. So I'll hit save. Now there would only be one last step to do, which is if I were to select these and press 3, which is smooth preview, which you don't need to worry about this for this week. This is more of a future week thing, but if you want to start worrying about it, you can. If I put into smooth preview, I get some pretty heavy deformations in certain places. So I would want to just add in some extra edge loops to make sure that doesn't happen. So you could stop the tutorial here or stick with me, up to you. But I'm going to want to insert edge loops into this top piece. What we have to do is hit, select that, hit edit mesh, chamfer vertice to get a circle in the middle there, and then I can put an edge loop here, edge loop here, and then I'll put one down here-ish to make sure this crimp doesn't travel too far. Maybe a little too, a little too tight what I just did there. Okay. I'm going to hide Q. I'm going to hide this. Go in here, do the same thing. Insert an edge loop. Vertex selection mode. Select this vertice. Edit mesh. Chamfer vertice. Insert edge loop tool. Go like that. Alright. Now, if I hit Q, object mode, 3, now you can see when I smooth it, my deformations aren't crazy anymore. Alright. And alright, now we're going to want to do similar things with this here. So edge loop there, edge loop there, edge loop there. It's often referred to as the rule of 3 edges, where for every hard edge you want to have 1, 2, 3 edges to represent it. there, edge loop there, edge loop there, edge loop there. Dun, 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 dun. Hold on, I can get my reference out of here. Q. And oh, pardon me. Now, if I try and insert an edge loop down here, you'll see it does what I said we didn't want it to do, which is the reason I created that polygon island up here. So I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. Oop. Select all these faces. Make sure I didn't select anything extra. And then extrude, R. And that'll give me a loop down there. Insert edge loop tool, give me a loop right there. And now we're good with all of these corners. Let's see, we don't want this going anywhere. One more at the top here. One more there. And we're almost done. One there. Here. There. And again. Gonna want to make that polygon island. So click and then tab select all of these. Extrude, R, scale it in, and that should be good. Now if I hit 3, and now it is smoothed, but it still maintains its shape, but we get a little extra, but we get the edge taken off. And there it is. There's our T-can. Here's our T-can lid, which I can, again, smooth. And I'll hit File and Save because I am done. I can compare to my reference, and yeah, we're looking good. That's it. All right, that wraps it up. Hope that was helpful, and yeah, join me next time. Sorry if I got a little bit too mumbly. I kind of get a little bit inside myself when I start modeling. I just like all the creative, like problem solving aspects of it, I get like a little bit wrapped up sorting everything out. But thanks for sticking with me, and yeah. Yeah, see you next time for UV Unwrapping It. You have a good day, night, whatever. Have a good week. Signing off.